He's really good standing up. So there's kind of like an even playing field. But when that motherfucker gets a hold of you, you're in deep danger.
From dominating contenders left and right, to coming inches from UFC gold but somehow falling short. Some of these stories aren't just heartbreaking, they're outright tragic. Today, we're diving deep into the most epic, heart-wrenching, and unforgettable UFC careers where fighters were this close to being crowned champions. And trust me, you're not ready for what's coming. Starting with the man who made you believe he was untouchable, yet somehow, the belt always slipped through his fingers. Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson, the El Cucuy. If there's ever been a fighter who defined the concept of close but no cigar, it's Tony. Ferguson's dominance over the lightweight division during his prime was nothing short of legendary. A 12-fight win streak, wins over legends like Edson Barboza and Rafael dos Anjos. Ferguson was supposed to be the guy to face Khabib in the most anticipated lightweight showdown of all time. And then, everything fell apart. The fight was booked 5 times, and each time something went wrong. Injuries, fights falling through. It wasn't just that Ferguson never won the title, it was that he was always right there, waiting for the opportunity that just never seemed to arrive. Age caught up with him, and after his loss to Justin Gaethje, it seemed like the golden years of Ferguson's career were over. The UFC lightweight belt eluded him for the entirety of his prime. An enigma wrapped in madness, Ferguson's talent was undeniable. But the belt? Forever a mirage. Yoel Romero. A walking nightmare, an Olympic medalist turned MMA juggernaut. If there's one man who can make you believe in gods, it's this freak of nature. With a physique that defied human anatomy, Romero was like a glitch in the Matrix, crashing through everything in his path. His entry into the UFC was the stuff of legends, 4 KOs in his first 5 fights, including world champions like Tim Kennedy and Derek Brunson. Then came the flying knee that left Chris Weidman looking like a broken doll. But for all of his raw power and terrifying speed, the UFC title always danced just out of his reach. A split decision loss to Robert Whittaker in 2017.
Outstanding crowd work.
Close, very close. Many believed he won. A subsequent title shot against Israel Adesanya. A snooze fest in many fans' eyes, but another controversial loss for Yoel. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. But for 4 years, he was the scariest man in the division, an untouchable force who couldn't quite get the belt. He wasn't just a contender, he was the contender. But the championship? Forever a shadow. Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is the personification of the fighter's heart, never backing down, never quitting. From an obscure MMA documentary fighter to a staple in the UFC's lightweight division, Poirier's journey was filled with sacrifice and redemption.
And it feels good to be home, Louisiana!
He took out names like Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, and Eddie Alvarez, becoming the most dangerous man in the division. Yet, despite all of his skill, all of his wins, Poirier just couldn't outlast the champions. He earned his shot against Khabib Nurmagomedov, and it was a massacre. Despite his toughness, Khabib's relentless grappling was too much for Poirier. And then, in a later bid for gold, Oliveira handed him another loss. Poirier is the fighter's fighter, a man who's always near the top but never quite holds the belt. He is, however, a legend in the truest sense. Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is a man who fights like he's got a death wish. And honestly, it's part of what makes him one of the most entertaining fighters in UFC history.
He's hurt bad. Gaethje has him down!
But the journey to UFC gold? Not so smooth. Gaethje's early days were chaotic, filled with wars in the cage. His rise in the UFC was marked by brutal wars against Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez. His victory over Tony Ferguson for the interim lightweight title seemed like it was his time.
That's it! Oh, man.
Yet, when it came to facing Khabib, Gaethje had no answer for the champion's submission game. Still, Gaethje's resume is filled with iconic wins and brutal knockouts. He may have never won the belt, but his name is etched into UFC lore as one of the most entertaining fighters to never hold gold. Alistair Overeem. Alistair Overeem was the heavyweight division's walking paradox. Coming into the UFC, he was already one of the most decorated fighters in MMA. 3 championship belts, a legacy of destruction. But here's the catch, he couldn't seem to get his hands on the one that mattered. Overeem entered the UFC like a storm, destroying Brock Lesnar, dominating the likes of Roy Nelson, and even earning a title shot against Stipe Miocic. Remember when he dropped Stipe in the first round of their fight?
Oh my goodness! He got the guillotine!
Oh, that was something else. But what happened next? He lost. Again.
Big shot! He's out!
A guy who had proven time and time again he could beat anyone, except the guy holding the UFC belt. Overeem's story is a tragic one. Imagine dominating an entire era, only to be left behind by the one man who could ruin your entire career. But Overeem didn't quit. He fought, lost, fought again. His legacy? One of dominance, but never quite the champion. John Fitch. John Fitch, a man who went on an incredible 9-year streak, losing only to the champion. Sounds like an epic story, right? Unfortunately, in Fitch's case, his career wasn't framed by his victories, but by the title he couldn't win. Throughout his time in the UFC, he was a dominant force, taking down opponents with ease, holding the position of #1 contender for nearly a decade. The problem? Georges St. Pierre. Fitch gave GSP a tough fight in their title bout, but it wasn't enough, and despite his continued dominance, another title shot never came. It wasn't just his skill that kept him at the top, it was his incredible consistency, winning fights, beating contenders, and somehow still not getting the title he deserved. Urijah Faber. The King of Sacramento, Urijah Faber built the featherweight division, but somehow the belt just kept slipping through his fingers. 4 title shots, 4 losses to champions. Faber's story is a bittersweet one. He came to the UFC after dominating in WEC, where he became a household name, yet every time he faced the champion, he came up short. Dominic Cruz, Henrix Barao. But the legacy he left? Unmatched. Faber's ability to compete at the top level for so long was extraordinary. He was the kingmaker in the featherweight division, taking out contender after contender, but the championship always seemed just beyond his reach. Still, Faber is an icon, a pioneer of the sport who defined an era even without ever wearing the UFC belt. Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Nogueira was a juggernaut of Brazilian MMA. Known for his tenacity and ground game, he was the first true submission artist to make his mark in the UFC's heavyweight division. But when it came to the UFC championship, it was the one thing that always eluded him. His career was an epic one, defeating legends across the globe. He claimed PRIDE gold and dominated opponents in Brazil, but when it came time for the UFC, Nogueira's quest for the belt always fell short. From Tim Sylvia to Frank Mir, Nogueira was always in the mix but never quite the champion. He was the second best fighter in the world for an entire era, and his failure to secure the UFC belt is one of the sport's great tragedies. Joseph Benavidez. Joseph Benavidez is the definition of the best to never win a title. Fast, scrappy, and explosive, Benavidez was an absolute terror in the flyweight division. His rivalries with Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson were legendary. 2 of the best flyweights to ever fight, and yet, despite all of his heart, all of his determination, Benavidez just couldn't beat Johnson. He fought him twice, losing both times, the second via knockout. Benavidez continued to win, but that UFC title, the one that eluded him, remained just out of reach. Even after Johnson moved on, Benavidez's title dreams were shattered by the likes of Henry Cejudo and Davison Figueiredo. His story is one of near misses, where talent and dedication collided with the unyielding wall of competition. Dan Henderson. If you didn't expect Dan Henderson at #1, you clearly haven't been paying attention to MMA history. Henderson is a man who single-handedly defined the word grit. His legendary power, his ability to fight anyone, anywhere, made him one of the most dangerous men to ever step foot in the octagon. Yet, for all of his success across multiple organizations, he could never quite get the UFC gold. His career is nothing short of historic. From his UFC 17 tournament victory to his wars in Pride, Strikeforce, and the UFC, Henderson was a legend. A 2-division champion in PRYDE, a knockout artist who destroyed everyone, but never the UFC champion. Even when he was offered title shots, he kept knocking on the door, but the belt remained locked. Henderson's heart, his power, and his will to fight made him a Hall of Famer, but the title? Always just a hair out of reach. These are the greatest fighters to never win a UFC championship belt. Legends, warriors, and icons of the sport who gave everything and still couldn't capture gold. In the end, maybe that's the tragedy. Sometimes the best fighters don't always wear the belt, but their legacies? Unmatched.